on HQ, and let's take a look at the current CFB Power Rankings from our Brandon Marcello. You got the Longhorns at #1 after that absolute routing of the Sooners. Seems like he likes our ground troops here, but not so much the airmen, maybe. Outside the top 25, Ole Miss also dropped 11 down to number 23. Time now to welcome in the co-host for the Cover 3 podcast, Danny Kanell, and college football reporter for 24/7, Brandon Marcello, to chat through some of Brandon's power rankings here. And we got to start with one that has a little bit of a discrepancy. Number 6, Penn State, fresh off their overtime win over USC. The Nittany Lions are one of only 3 undefeated teams in the Big Ten. But Brandon, AP poll puts them at number 3. You have them outside your top 5. So what do you need to see from Penn State to move them up in your rankings?
Yeah, I keep waiting for them to put it together a 4-quarter performance that really kind of sticks out to me. They've struggled at times to be a little bit more consistent. I will say this, I'm very high on Penn State. I love what they're doing offensively. Daniel Kanell, they're leading the charge, calling plays, a little bit more creative, even as we saw with some trick plays against USC this past week. But Penn State's very primed here, especially with the upcoming schedule, to make some big leaps going ahead. Again, just keep winning. You will rise in these rankings. But right now, I'm still waiting for a little bit more consistency there from them for a full 4-quarter game.
Yeah, all of a sudden that Wisconsin game coming up gets that much more interesting considering Wisconsin did to Rutgers. But I'll focus on Drew Aller because, man, I was impressed, Brandon, with what he was able to do. And I've always looked at him sort of as a game manager who needed to take that next step. And even with that addition you mentioned of a new offensive coordinator, we were supposed to get more offensive fireworks like we saw yesterday. And I know he had 3 interceptions, which is the most that he's had in his previous 556 attempts. But I'm actually like, hallelujah. Finally, he's taken some chances down the field. And I know he got burned and there were some mistakes in there. But you also saw 391 yards passing, and you saw him find a target who may not be a wide receiver, but in a tight end, and Tyler Warren, who is absolutely as good an offensive threat as almost any wide receiver in the country. And this was a big win for James Franklin and this program to go on the road versus another traditional blue blood. And USC is a tough out. I know they're 3-3, but they've been in every game. That was a tricky spot for Penn State to be in. I thought that was a huge win for Penn State. So I'm a little bit more bullish on them than you are for what they've done. But you're right. They got it all sitting in front of them now as that team that's supposed to be taking the next step. I feel like they're headed in the right direction.
Yeah, overcoming a 14-point deficit at the half. I'm with you on that one, Danny. That was absolutely incredible. They are 6-0 in back-to-back seasons for the first time since 1985 and 86. Next up, let's talk number 8, Alabama, and number 14, Tennessee. They will play each other this weekend in the 3rd Saturday of October. Both lost 2 weeks ago, and we're not impressive, right, with their wins this week. Danny, where's the panic meter on both of these teams?
Oh, man, I would love to have polled both of these fan bases. You know how to do like the noise meter and see who could get it louder? I think it'd be really close to see who's there. Clearly, with Bama's run, their dynasty, I think their fans and their, the pulse around Bama's probably a little bit more tense than Tennessee, who's kind of Josh Heupel has just brought them back. But I'm actually probably more worried about Tennessee than I am about Bama. Bama has issues, no doubt, but I feel better about Jalen Milroe and that offense and what they can do. And I know Tennessee's defense is really, really good, but we came in with so much hype around Tennessee's offense and Nico Iamaleava to have this, breakout season where he was going to be a Heisman Trophy candidate contender and he was going to be a future NFL draft pick, which he probably will be. But you're seeing some growing pains around this Tennessee offense, and their defense is what is absolutely saving them from not only going, from 1 loss to Arkansas, which is a bad loss, but to potentially 2 at home. That was really an ugly loss. And most importantly, with Nico, they're struggling to protect him. All of a sudden, they've given up 3 sacks, 4 sacks, and 3 sacks in the last 3 games. And it is impacting his confidence, and it's impacting their ability to move the ball down the field. So I am more concerned about Tennessee than I am Bama. But both fan bases would push back and say, wait a second, it's probably us. They would say, man, we have bigger issues. But I am probably more concerned about Tennessee than Alabama.
I'm the same there. I echo everything you say. What really concerns me about Tennessee with Nico right now is that he's thrown for under 200 yards in 5 of the last 7 games. He hasn't thrown a touchdown in the last 2 games. And it just seems like that there's not a lot of confidence in him as a play caller from Josh Heupel. I also think that a lot of defensive coordinators have figured out the book on this Tennessee offense this season. These last 3 opponents have kind of figured out how to attack them defensively, starting even back with OU, to Arkansas obviously beating them, and then Florida this past week. They've all kind of curtailed things with that offense, and that is concerning. Not just road games they've struggled, but now at home. And with Alabama, Jalen Milroe is a superstar. He can carry that offense and, heck, even that entire team on his back, and we've seen him deliver time and time again when they go on the road. So I am much more concerned about Tennessee. This has been a trend the last 3 weeks offensively, and then you have a quarterback who is struggling, not just at home, but also on the road, and they've got some big games coming up. Jalen Milroe puts the team on his back no matter where they go. Even in that loss to Vanderbilt, when they only had the ball for a few minutes, it seemed like, he still got them in position to win the game. Tennessee doesn't quite have that in their quarterback.
As we look to that game this weekend, Alabama is laying 2.5, and the point total is 56. Moving on to number 23, Ole Miss. I don't know if it's a hot toddy, if it's more of a lukewarm toddy at this point. After suffering their 2nd loss this season, what was supposed to be their year is seemingly, slipping away. Have they eliminated themselves from CFP contention, or what do they need to get back on track? I'll start with you, Brandon.
They need to beat Georgia at home here in a couple of weeks. That's the biggest game of the year anyway going into this season, but now it's an absolute must-win. They got to win that game, and they've got to win out and go to the SEC championship game, in my opinion, because of the type of loss they had at home at Kentucky, because of the weak schedule earlier in the year. People will argue, well, they're playing the SEC. They got a very tough schedule. They got one of the easiest schedules in the SEC this year, and their biggest game is Georgia, and you get it at home. Now it's a must-win. They've got to win that to stay in playoff contention in my eyes. But to do that, they've got to figure things out on the road offensively, not just with this Georgia game at home is the big concern, but their offense, when they go on the road, it's been a trend the last 2 years under Lane Kiffin. They look so much more different. They're undisciplined. This past week at LSU, they had 12 penalties as a team. The offense was herky-jerky. You look at last season, they were averaging more than 20 points a game at home than on the road. There was a noticeable fall-off when they got outside of Oxford, and that's continuing this season. I got big concerns about Ole Miss this year. So, yes, they need to win that game against Georgia to stay in the playoff conversation, but I'm actually more concerned about what they could do on the road against some of the lesser opponents on their schedule.
Yeah, see, Brandon, that's the point I kind of wanted to hit on because, when going into the LSU Ole Miss game, most people across the country were like, this is a playoff elimination game. And I said, well, hold on a second. Well, 10-2 in the SEC for the loser of that game. I don't think that prevents you, but I do think it would be more one of these learning games where, yes, if you're Ole Miss, I think they're still in the playoffs. If they go 10-2, it's more about them having to run the table now. And then you kind of start looking at some of their weaknesses and some of the issues that you talked about, the penalties, and even, Jackson Dart's been a little bit up and down, and the defense has been up and down. That, to me, is the bigger concern, and I think you nailed it, too, because it wouldn't surprise me at all if they're in a game with Georgia, who, by the way, was in a pretty tight game against Mississippi State, and Kirby Smart's got issues on that defense that he's got to iron out, and they also were in a tight game with Kentucky. They did win it like Ole Miss didn't, but I just think that you should see this Ole Miss team most likely end up with another loss or 2 at the end of the season. So I don't know if that's what eliminated them. I think it's more about the concerns and some of the discrepancies and what you're seeing from this team based on their schedule. I don't think they get in. So I do think it's an elimination game, but not because of that one game. It's more about what I learned about Ole Miss moving forward.
All right, so a tough uphill battle for Ole Miss, both of you thinking that they're going to miss the CFP. That's our Danny Kanell and Brandon Marcello. As always, thank you for your time. And if you like college football, then make sure you check out the Cover 3 podcast. The fellas take you everywhere from National Signing Day all the way up to the National Championship. You can scan the QR code on your screen right there to listen or really listen wherever you get your podcasts.